Okay, Bill says, hey guys, off-topic question. 76ers next 21-game stretch to the end of March is a brutal one. How many of the 21 games do you think the Sixers could win? Well, first of all, this is a great opportunity for me to say, whoever made the NBA schedule and looked at the All-Star break and then said, not only, it's one thing for the Sixers to have hard games coming out of the break, right? Like you got to play teams at some point during the season. Playing a few tough teams in a row out of the All-Star break is fine. What would possess you to say, the value of the All-Star break is a week off, and then you should play 3 games in 80 hours out of the break? You have a back-to-back, and then not even a third game in 4 nights, a third game in 4 days, because they play at fucking 1 p.m. on Sunday after the back-to-back on Thursday and Friday out of the break. Did you have a concussion making the schedule? Like, what happened there? I don't understand that at all.
We may disagree on food taste. We agree here, Kyle. What the heck was that? What were they doing? I don't understand what they were doing. Like, even look, last year after the All-Star break, we saw what the schedule was going to look like in March, where I think they had on the road 17 games in total, 5 games at home, 12 on the road. And we were like, damn, they're going to be in some trouble here. They made it through. They actually played well. But for this schedule here, exactly what you're talking about, this was nuts what they were thinking about putting this one together.
Yep. Anyway, to this schedule that he was actually talking about, not the jumble of games 3 and 4 nights right after the break. It is a really, really tough stretch. And honestly, it seemed like he was ending it at the end of March against the Raptors. There's the Thunder and the Heat are the next 2 games immediately after that. They're not exact. I mean, if Miami gets Butler, if everyone's healthy.
Well, that Miami game is likely going to be huge.
Huge. So I'm going to extend it to 23 games. You've got the Knicks, Cavs, Bucks, and Celtics to kick it off. You've got another stretch with the Knicks twice in a row, then the Bucks, and then you've got the Heat, Suns, Lakers, Clippers, Kings, Clippers, Cavs stretch, which is just brutal. There's 23 games. They might be lucky to win 5 of them. Maybe 5, maybe 7. It's going to be a rough stretch. This is a real tough. And look, we talked about getting to 14. They picked up 2 of them. After this 23-game stretch, they end up with 5 pretty easy games to finish the season. At Grizzlies, at Spurs, Pistons, Magic, Nets. That's about as easy of a 5-game stretch as you're going to get. So maybe they pick up 4 wins there. Maybe they added in 2 wins they had coming into the All-Star break. That's 6. They need to find a way to get 8 wins. I'm saying 5 to 7 is probably something I'm comfortable projecting.
8 wins during that stretch.
So they just need to find like between 1 and 3 more where they surprise us. But it might legitimately be tough to get 8 wins during this 23-game stretch. That is a very tough schedule. Very tough. He's 100% right.
Yeah, it's nasty.
It's just, here's what I would say. They might be able to steal that Knicks game coming right out of the break, because the Knicks, as they've added these new additions, OG is hurt. He's out for, I think he's still out for another couple weeks, I think, with what he's dealing with. Mm-hmm. They still don't have Mitchell Robinson. Brunson's obviously playing great, but they've got some things to figure out right now. So the Knicks is the one that I probably feel maybe not best about, but it's like, I could see them winning that. And they've beaten Cleveland recently. I wouldn't say. I think Cleveland's going to come in with some bad intentions.
I wouldn't. If I was a bettor, I wouldn't pick that.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the one that I'm expecting. Although we do have an event that night, so I would love for them to.
No, Sixers by 15. Come join us in the party. I'm sorry, I did not know what I was saying there.
That's next Friday, folks, the 23rd. Hope you're there.
Wells Fargo Center take over our second one of the season. All of us will be there. We'll have a good time.
Yeah, so even if the Sixers stink, we'll have a good time.
Again, we've got a bar in that section. Like, just because I have a show a couple hours later does not mean I will not have a beverage with you. It'll just be a more interesting show.
Just drink the pain away.
Yeah. So
I'll be driving anyway. Come back to the studio, so you good.
It's just a brutal, brutal stretch. You have to win. Here are the ones you have to get. You have to get 2 Charlotte games, right? You have to win those. You're gonna have to pick off at least one of the West Coast trip games. So between Phoenix, the Lakers, Clippers, Kings, that's going to be tough. You have to beat Toronto end of the month. And the 2 Miami games, they won't be easy. You cannot lose both. You have to at least split the pair against the Heat. And
that Orlando one to a second last game of the season, they're the other team that's right there tied with Miami in that 7th and 8th spot, that's going to be a big one too. Yeah. And that one at the Wells Fargo Center, in theory, if you're going to get Embiid back, the mid-April is about as good of a chance as you're going to get. They could really use them to pick that one up. And, maybe it does come back in that 6-week timeline. That would put him into late March, early April.
Yeah.
You have a chance toward the end of the season of him helping you pick off a couple of these wins. But yeah, getting 8 wins in that stretch will be tough.
Yeah, but so we have talked a lot about health and coming out of the All-Star break with who will come back. This is not to pick on Kelly Oubre, but when you can, on a night like last night, say, hey, Kelly, you're just going to sit on the bench because we're going to play Buddy and DeAnthony and Batum and Tobias, that's a lot better for them than just like, hey, Kelly is right now 2 for 11 and we have to sit through 2 for 12, 2 for 13 to get to, 3 for 14 or whatever. There are nights where he'll only play 15, 20 minutes and you sit him down and say he doesn't have it tonight. And that's not just true for him. That's true of most of these guys in the, let's say, 5 through 10-ish range. They'll have the depth that they'll be able to actually identify and roll with the hot hand. Whereas now it's just, who's available? Because you're playing, and it doesn't matter how bad you are.
And, of course, when they put this schedule together, as we talk about it, and we get all up in arms about it right now, of course, they do this when they think Joel Embiid and everybody's going to be on the floor and able to go and play against these other playoff Eastern Conference opponents and even the top teams in the West. So, of course, that's what they're thinking, but things happening. But now that we are in this part of the season, they've struggled. Joel Embiid is now out. You're having the issues with Melton and Batum, Harris, Covington, who knows about that. They're going to need to find some ways to get some W's. So trying to gauge where this team is at the moment when Embiid is on the floor, going through this brutal stretch and seeing how good they are and lifting everybody's spirits going into the postseason, saying, oh, they can actually win and compete for a championship again. Now it's different because of the fact that he's not here. And we've seen it in the past where, the 17 games in a row that they won at the end of the season, back in 18, 19, and Ben Simmons was phenomenal. JJ Redick, the rest of the group, getting Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova as part of that team and everybody playing their part. This stretch is brutal where we don't know that that's even possible. We're looking at it, can you string together 3 straight games in a row versus 16?
I would say the one thing you would take from that streak in 18 that is always worth considering. Like, we look at this schedule and say, wow, these teams are very good. They're all either playoff, play-in teams for the most part. March tends to be where basketball goes to die.
Yes.
Like, you can't just sit and look at a schedule and say, that's a good team. Yep. They'll probably lose. There are lots of issues with, one, motivation. There are guys, especially the veteran-heavy teams, who get to March and are like, hey, just get me through to the playoffs. And they're, especially a team like the Sixers, that once you take Joel Embiid off it and they're not a marquee team, they're not a marquee matchup, there are going to be guys taking their foot off the gas. So you're probably going to be able to steal some games here or there that way. There's also the health component, right? Like, the Sixers will deal with it with Joel, but other teams, like,
sure.
So like, look at the Clippers, for example. They have both their Clippers games. The Clippers will be conservative with any sort of Kawhi issue, any sort of Paul George issue, any sort of James Harden issue. Because with Kawhi especially, that's a guy that he essentially is the difference between them being a title contender
and he has played a big
or
number
irrelevant. And he's been amazing. Like, that team has been very, very good.
Did you, in the latest straw poll, did you have him in your top 5?
I considered it, but I
had him
don't
6.
think I did. Yeah, I think he was right on the fringe for me. I actually don't remember who I put 5th in that. I remember my top 4,
but even during that stretch, as you talk about last season, when I mentioned 17 games that they had, 12 games on the road, 5 at home, and they had a fantastic record for the month of March. We looked at it when the schedule came out, and they overcame some really good teams there and found a way to get those W's. So you're right. You're absolutely right. And if Maxey, once they have this time during the All-Star break, and as much as we talk about Ricky Council and the scouting that the other team is going to do to try to slow down the positive things that we've seen, the Sixers are now going to also have that opportunity with their coaching staff of how do we now fix some of the problems that we had once Embiid left. Yeah. And they throw in these different defenses at Tyrese Maxey, having Buddy Hield, maybe getting Tobias Harris and some of these other reinforcements back to help out what they need to do. So we're talking about this, and Derek, maybe it is something that they can actually reach, because of we're also not discounting how good the coaching staff may be and putting him in the right position offensively, defensively to get those W's.
Yeah, and look, it's just like they are 3 losses up on Miami and Orlando right now. That's a good cushion with,
Sure.
What do they have? 23 and 5, 28 games left. That's why we're saying you only really need to get, maybe 12 or so wins here over this last stretch. That's a decent spot to be in. Like when you start looking at it, Chicago is 9th. They're 7 losses up on Chicago. If you really want to get dark and talk about Brooklyn, they're 12 losses up against. Like they've got some cushion where
put it this way. I am no disrespect to the family member of the podcast.
Not worried at all.
Family member related.
I know what the team is.
I am not afraid of Brooklyn passing the Sixers.
So that's why when people are like, why would Joel Embiid come back to this? Because they're going to be in the playoffs, right? And they have a chance of avoiding the play-in completely if they play at least not even good ball, just competent ball. You look at the schedule, it's going to be tough over the next month or so. But like Kyle pointed out, some teams aren't going to care at that point in the season. Some teams are going to prioritize health or rest or getting ready for the playoffs. Not every game is you're going to get the opponent's best, and you're just going to win some random shit too. So like getting to 8 wins over the next 23 games, it's not that tall of a task. It's tall because you have a tough competition, but it's not tall because shit just tends to happen over that extended stretch. If you can go 8-15, 10-13, something like that, you're in a pretty good spot.
We all silly like the mayor.